Hi, it's Heather, and today I'm making the perfect midwinter dish, beef stew. Now, beef stew is one of those dishes that can take days to make, or you can make it in as little as 2 hours, and that's pretty much what we're going to do today. Now, the first order of business is to brown the meat. One of the nice things about this dish is that you're going to learn a lot of good, useful techniques. So, first up, brown the meat. I have here about 2 pounds of stew meat. It's typically chuck or round. And I cut them into about 1-inch pieces. You can go a little bigger, but again, it's going to cut down on the time if they're smaller. Now, when you're browning anything, whether it's steak or pork loin or here the beef stew, the thing to remember is it must be dry when it hits the pan. Otherwise, it sort of steams. The other thing, you can't crowd the pan. You have to give it room because then it won't brown properly and you'll miss all that lovely crystallization. All right. I have here my first batch, and I'm seasoning it. On one side, I'm going to do, I don't know, a tablespoon of olive oil in my hot pan. That is plenty. And I'm just going to add my meat to it. That's what you want to hear. Now, I only salted one side. I'm going to salt the other side after it's cooked a bit. That way, I don't want any of that moisture to come up because it's going to make that browning harder. Okay, I browned off my meat, just took it out. It is beautifully browned, but tough as nails, not quite ready to eat. Look at this pan. This is what's going to make this stew so great. I'm going to saute my vegetables in it. I have carrots, about a cup, onions, a little more than a cup, and celery, about a half a cup. Now, as you can see, it's baby carrots. You can use sliced carrots, but let's make it easy. Baby carrots are already done. And then I'm going to get those nice and soft, and I'm going to pull up all those brown bits. It's kind of like deglazing with vegetables. I'm going to add some garlic to that once this gets going. Of course, garlic cooks faster. We're going to let that go for a little while. Now, I'm going to add my mushrooms. A lot of times when you have a more complicated beef stew, you cook the mushrooms separately and you add them later. But you know, you don't have time for that. So I cut them a little larger because I want them to also absorb that sort of first layer of oil that's really heavily flavored. We're going to add the flour now. As everybody knows, flour is a thickening agent. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a couple of tablespoons, sprinkling it over my vegetables, because this should be enough to give us that nice body. And if it's not, we could tweak it a little bit later. Not to worry. Now, you can't just add it. You have to sort of stir it up and like cook it a little bit. It'll get a little browned. Okay, now we're going to add our meat. Lots of meat. Accumulated juices, all good. We want those for sure. Put that right in. Lovely. And now we can think about some herbs. Classic herb to use, definitely hands down thyme. I have here about a tablespoon of fresh. Now, dried thyme is great. It's more concentrated. You would use less, but it is perfectly fine to use. Now, I need to put my liquid in so we can braise it, soften that meat, get it really stewed. I have here, I'm going to add about a cup of beef broth. I have the sort of highest quality I can find in the store. And I'm going to add, again, a cup of chicken broth because that sort of makes it a little lighter. It gives it a better overall flavor. So I still need a little bit more liquid in here because it has to be to cover. So I, of course, am going to add wine. You don't have to. You can just increase your stocks. But I'm going to add a lovely Washington State Merlot. The classic wine to add would be, of course, Burgundy or Pinot Noir. But this isn't beef bourguignon. So I'm going to add Merlot. We are now just waiting for the beef to get tender, and then we'll add a couple more things and be done. Our stew's been cooking for about an hour, so now I'm going to start to make a few adjustments. First off, I want to taste it just to sort of see where I'm at. Yummy. Definitely needs a few things though. First, I'm going to add just a pinch of the dried thyme because it's more intense, and I mean a pinch. You know, quarter, not even quarter teaspoon. And then, of course, salt and pepper. But more importantly, it's time to add a couple of frozen vegetables. I do not use frozen vegetables a lot, with some exception. One thing I always do when I'm doing frozen vegetables, as you can see, this is in a strainer. I thaw it and then I rinse it, just to sort of get rid of that sort of frozen taste. Now I'm not going to add all of these. I'm just going to stir in maybe half. Pearl onions are sort of a classic with beef stew. Less so peas, but I like them, so add what you like. Well, that's looking pretty good. I want to thicken it just a pinch. So I'm going to show you one of my big tricks, old trick. The Joy of Cooking calls it kneaded butter, but you know, the French culinary way is called, it's a beurre manie. It's simply a paste you make of softened butter and flour 1-to-1. And just a pinch of it on your whisk. That's probably even too much. And you just sort of whisk it into your very warm liquid, and it thickens beautifully, nicely, ever so gently. And you let it cook a little bit, and it adds a little butter. Butter always adds a little richness, but not too much, so you don't have to be scared. So I'm going to let this cook a few more minutes because I want the frozen vegetables to really get incorporated. But I'm pretty happy here. Here we have it, beef stew. 2-hour beef stew, which may seem like a long time, but compared to the day and a half it takes to make beef bourguignon, you got yourself a bargain. Plus, it's delicious. Our beef is tender, the peas and the onions are not overdone because we added them at the end, and yet the carrots and mushrooms hold up beautifully. I garnished it with a little parsley because I like parsley, and it works lovely with our rich, delicious sauce. Mashed potatoes, that's my choice. People like butter noodles. I like mashed potatoes, so that's what I'm serving it with. And then, of course, we must talk about the wine. Naturally, the Powers Merlot is a great match because we cooked with it. Wine that you cook with, you should also be able to drink. It makes everything better. But I'm going to pour it with an Italian wine that has a bit more complexity, a little drier. It's a Solane Valpolicella, and I think it's going to work quite well. Give it a little taste. Now that is really good. For wines, for recipes, much, much more, SoGood.tv. Thank you.